Ashes by J.C. Jarrett. Chapter 7. The Rusty Spigot. Rogar pulled the wagon up to the stable near the Inn of the Rusty Spigot. Setting the brake, he hopped down and started inside to find the stablemaster. Peering out from the wagon, Jander climbed to the ground. He was not a good sight. His cloak and clothes were torn and blood-stained. His pale white skin that seemed to glow in the moonlight amplified the scars and wounds he now carried. The thick line that ran the length of his face from his chin to his high dark hairline, bisecting the now empty eye socket. A large hole was torn in the front and back of his tunic. When he moved, an angry red scar could be seen, the wound now mostly healed from where he had been impaled upon his own blade. He pulled his dark cloak tight around him and started toward the inn's main door. Rogar neared the wagon, looking for a sign of Jander. He did not want to cross the highborn's path anymore if he could help it. Peering inside, he was elated to see the wagon vacant. The man hurried to go through the misbegotten goods in the back of the wagon from the exploits of Grover and his band of thieves. After a few minutes, Rogar was happy to locate a small sack containing a mix of gold, silver, and copper coins. Just as he was backing out of the wagon, something else caught his attention. A jeweled hilt peeked out, nearly buried under a pile of stolen clothing. Pushing the clothes away, Rogar let out a long, low whistle in admiration of his find. A large sapphire set in the pommel of the golden hilt of a broadsword in a highly polished wooden scabbard. "Looks like a king's blade," he said aloud to himself, wondering at its value. Slowly drawing the sword from its scabbard, he marveled at the polish on the blade. Replacing the blade, he swung the scabbard across his back. At least now he was armed, he thought. Jumping down from the wagon, Rogar started toward the Rusty Spigot, his mind on Mandy once more. The door opened easily, releasing a torrent of voices that merged into a hum of noise. Jander looked across the dim room. A cloud of pipe smoke hung low in the air, making the room appear to be in a light fog. The main room housed a bar with several stools that ran along the left side of the room. A heavy-set balding man stood behind it, with a wall full of shelves behind him. Around the room haphazardly was placed rough tables, several round for only a few people to sit, and a few long and rectangular that could hold dozens. Making his way to the bar, Jander took a seat near the end, away from the door. The bartender mirrored Jander, who without raising his head spoke from under his hood. "Hyborian ale." The bartender nodded and headed to an ornately carved small wooden barrel sat on a shelf. Taking a copper tankard, he filled it with a golden frothy liquid from the barrel's tap. Just then the door opened again, this time letting in Rogar. Rogar entered the inn's main room like he had been here dozens of times. Quickly scanning the room, there she was, bending down, placing mugs of ale and mead onto a long table full of rowdy drinkers. Her low-cut shirt was laced up tight, barely hiding her large breasts and ample cleavage. Her bright golden hair was swept back in a large, long braid that stopped at her slender waist. She raised up from placing the cups, her brown eyes falling on Rogar. "Rogar!" she called excitedly, running toward him. She leapt upon him, her arms and legs locking around the man, and planting a long, wet kiss to his lips. After they parted, the pair moved to a small table in the dimly lit corner of the inn. Jander watched the exchange, not knowing if he would still be needing the services of Rogar now. Even if he did, he thought, I can give him tonight off. As Jander was turning his head away from the pair retreating to the corner table, his gaze fell upon the broadsword swung across Rogar's back. The sapphire-laden hilt flashed with reflected lantern light. As the pair slid into the table, the highborn eyed the broadsword greedily. "Where did you acquire that, Rogar?" he said quietly to himself. The door latch clicked quietly, and then it began to glide open slowly. The darkened room was still, only the combined rhythm of the entwined bodies breathing. Jander's one eye peered from under his hood, his night vision of his people already active. There upon the bed was the source of the breathing, laid Rogar with Mandy, their naked bodies close together, both totally oblivious to Jander's presence. The highborn looked around the room for a glint of jewel or the shine of steel. He was not here for gold coins or wealth. He wanted Rogar's broadsword. He had sensed the magic of it in the tavern below, and hoped it would help him if he ever encountered the dangerous blade of Westlake's daughter again. Kneeling down, he searched under the bed, and there found his prize. Glancing back up at the sleeping couple, he froze when his eye locked with Rogar's open and alert gaze. "Don't hurt her," Rogar said in a harsh whisper, begging for Mandy's safety. "She has nothing to do with any of this," he continued. "Neither do I anymore," he then added, for he was truly done with the highborn. "All I want is the sword, Rogar. Just the sword, and I will leave you both be." Jander spoke in hopes to get the sword without a fight. He was not up for another, having fared so badly in the last few encounters. Rogar reached under the bed and withdrew the jeweled broadsword still in its scabbard, then handed it over to the highborn, who took it eagerly. "I never want to see you again. Go and leave us in peace," Rogar said with a bit of force in his voice. "Farewell, Rogar," the highborn said, as he stood and silently exited the room. The door closed with an audible click, causing Mandy's head to rise off Rogar's bare chest. "Is everything okay?" she said sleepy to him, as she rested her chin back on him. "For the first time in a long time, I think it is," he said. "And only getting better," he finished, as he leaned in, kissing her softly on the lips. Jander stepped from the inn, holding the sword by the scabbard. He turned and started toward the stable with the idea to buy a horse and head on to the Crimson Hollow, where he was to meet up with De Crystal and that blasted mage Rubius. "This one already looks like he's been beaten," the gruff voice said from the darkness, as three men clambered out from the side of the stable. "Yeah, you're right," another added with a chuckle. "You got any coin left? If not, we will take that fancy sword you got there." The first who spoke spat at the highborn. Jander raised his one good eye, staring down the three men. A grin began to grow upon his face as he drew the broadsword from its polished wooden scabbard. Once the blade had fully escaped the case, a burst of orange light erupted from the blade as it engulfed in magical flames that spun like alive around the polished broad blade. The three would-be robbers came to a skidding stop, fear etched across their lined faces. They tried to turn and run, but did not have enough time to do so. The flaming blade swung in, cutting the heads from two of the men in one mighty swing. The severed heads tumbled through the air as the still-standing headless corpses burst into flames. The last man made it 3 steps before the burning blade burst out his chest. He had just enough time to look down at the fiery steel before he erupted into flames himself. The man's screams filled the night air, causing birds to erupt from their nests in nearby trees, and drawing a crowd of the curious from the inn, who found nothing but the dead laying a fire in the road. For Jander had already slipped away into the night. His mood brightened at the thought of his newfound power, and hoped he could cross the path of the young Westlake girl one more time.